Most 5-inch freestyle frames today are relatively minor variations on a relatively well-refined theme. And that's not a bad thing because the theme that all these quadcopter frames have kind of coalesced around is pretty effective. But it does mean it's hard to get too excited about reviewing yet another quadcopter frame that in all but cosmetic ways is basically the same as the quadcopter frames you've reviewed before. So I have a policy that in order for me to review a quadcopter frame, it has to have at least one new and interesting thing about it. And the Speedybee Mario, which is the frame we're reviewing today, has way more than one new and interesting thing about it. This is truly, and should I call it innovative? Because only one or two of the ideas it's got are actually new. But like all of the ideas they've put into this frame together, it's like the sum is greater than the whole of its parts. I think it's a really good frame. Well, at least I did when I was looking at the product page. Now, I've got a bunch of parts in front of me, and we're going to look at the real thing and see if it lives up. I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to learn something today. The way that I've been approaching frame review videos lately is I build the frame, and while I'm building the frame, I talk about the features that stand out. So this isn't exactly a build tutorial for the frame, although I will take you through the steps of building it. And what we've got here are actually two different frames. There's the Mario 5XH and the Mario 5DC. The XH is an X geometry frame where the arms are perfectly symmetrical, and the disadvantage of that is that the front motors can be in view of the camera, especially if you're not using a GoPro. If you're using a GoPro, the GoPro is usually mounted higher and it's got some up tilt, and that means that oftentimes you don't see the front propellers. But if you're using an FPV camera like the DJI O3, or if you're recording DVR with the Walk Snail or even HD0, or heck, even analog, if that's your primary camera, when that camera's down low, you'll usually see the props. And that's going to be true for this one as well. The workaround for that is what's called a Deadcat frame. And in a Deadcat frame, the arms are pushed straight out, kind of like this. And you might think, well, why didn't they just call it like a T frame or something? And the answer is that once upon a time, a long, long time ago, a quadcopter enthusiast's pet cat passed away, and he taxidermied the cat and built it into a quadcopter frame. So it was a flying cat, and its arms were stuck out like this, and everybody calls it a Deadcat frame. I'm not making this up. This is real. So the Deadcat frame would be used if you wanted to make sure that the arms were out of the way, or that the front props were out of the way, out of the view of the camera. It's going to have a little bit worse handling than a truly symmetrical frame, but the differences are pretty subtle and many people wouldn't even notice. I can't help but notice that the Mario manual doesn't actually have build instructions, like first get these pieces, put them together here, then get these pieces, put them together here. Instead, it's just got an exploded view of the frame, and you can kind of see where all the pieces go, and you can figure out how to put them together. For most people, that's going to be sufficient, but definitely for someone who is brand new to the hobby and maybe feeling a little bit overwhelmed, they might appreciate a little bit more detailed instructions. That's not really a criticism. I just, as a reviewer, have to find things to complain about, and I'm stretching to really do it. Like, there are a few frames out there that have these really detailed build instructions, and it's kind of nice to feel like they're sort of guiding you through putting it together. But obviously for somebody like me, I'm just going to look at the exploded view, and I'll be able to figure it out, right? Yeah. You can immediately see that Speedybee have put a lot of effort into this frame. This milled out section here, I presume that's to make room for like the motor screw, or maybe if the shaft sticks down a little bit, or, well, that's presumably why it's milled all the way through. What is this for? I don't actually know. But it's on both sides, so even if the arm gets flipped over, the arm is symmetrical. That's extra work, though. That's extra time on the mill, and it raises the costs to manufacture the frame. Likewise, they've got the end of the arm half milled like this, and you're going to see that that is a really novel and interesting way that they've joined the arms together in the body that we'll get to in just a little bit. So we're going to start with this plate. It is the bottom plate, and it is going to go like so with these milled notches facing up. We're going to get an M3 by 16 millimeter screw. Thank you, Bamboo, for printing this out. This is included with your Bamboo printer and the internal memory of the printer. One of the most useful prints I've ever made. And it's going to go up through that hole and through that hole. And the arms are going to go on like so. And then an M3x12 is going to go up through the center. And here's the interesting and novel way that the arm mounting goes. The second arm is going to come in like this over the top and fit together like that. And this is really clever. It's more clever than I actually thought it was when I first saw it. Because think about how the forces are going to be applied to the arms in a crash. The arm is going to take a hit and it's going to be levered this direction or that direction, depending on how the hit goes. And the basic job of an quadcopter arm mounting mechanism is to resist that force in such a way that the arm doesn't break or become loose. And what we've got here is we've got this screw here, which goes up through a big, thick, meaty part of the arm. Like it's really common if you've got a screw hole here or something that the arm will break where it gets thin as it goes around the screw hole. So we've got this screw hole here in a relatively meaty part of the arm. And then as we come here, we've got this screw. And when I first saw the frame, I criticized it because I said, this is a relatively thin, relatively weak part of the carbon, and it's going to get a lot of force there, and maybe it's going to break there. But if you think about it, that can't be true. Because when the arm tries to lever this direction, it presses up against this arm, and it can't really go there, right? It is transmitting that force down through this arm, and there's not a lot of force being applied here on the weak part of the carbon. So basically, no matter how I stress the arms, they're kind of playing to each other's strengths and avoiding putting stress on the weakest part of the arm. You've only got 3 screws here. So I guess if you did need to change an arm, you would be taking out 2 of the 3 screws, which is not ideal. Like people like 1 screw arm changes, but a lot of frames have 2 screw arm changes. And it's just a really smart way of locking these arms together so that they sort of strengthen each other. I guess the only question I have is, over time, will this loosen up? Will the arms start to get some play in them? Or once it's all tightened down, will it sort of stay snug? There's only one way to find out, and that's to finish building it. Next, we come to these pieces, and this is the answer to the wiggly arms problem. The screws alone are not going to hold the arms in place forever because you'll crash the quadcopter. The arms will start to loosen up. Things just wear. What we're going to do is we're going to place these little shims here. Is shim the right word? Braces? Whatever you want to call it. We're going to drop them down in. They're going to go in, and they're going to brace the arms like so. And that's going to be the final step to keeping the there we go. Keeping the arms snug. And now I really don't want to go anywhere. Next, we're going to take the mid plate. That's this one with the press nuts. We're going to orient it towards the rear of the quadcopter. That's this part here. And we're going to drop it down on. In fact, maybe there was a smarter way to put the arms in, like by putting the 12mm middle screw in first and then putting the arms in. How the hell am I going to do this without those pieces falling out? Here we go. I got it. No, don't fall out. Okay. See, I'm glad I'm getting the chance to build this twice because I'm going to figure out the smarter way to do it. And then we're going to put some standoffs on. And we have both smooth and knurled standoffs. Oh, these are M2 standoffs. Well, these are M3 screws, so that's clearly not it. We're going to put the smooth standoffs on these 4, and that's going to finally hold everything together. So the way that the arms mount to the frame is the first sort of innovative thing that this frame does. I haven't seen another frame do exactly this. I've seen frames with sort of overlapping arms that share a screw hole. I've seen frames with little center braces to keep the arms from getting loose. But the exact way this comes together is pretty novel. And now that it's together, it's really stiff. It's really strong. Like, they're not moving. I don't know how much they'll loosen up as you beat the crap out of this frame and fly it, but they're pretty stiff. The next thing that this frame does that's really cool is it's got just a huge library of 3D prints. And the 3D prints are actually available for you to download STLs. You can buy them, and these are actually, are they printed or are they injection molded? These are 3D printed. They are 3D printed. Not the best 3D print I've ever seen. Yeah, the quality of the I mean, whatever, it's fine. Like, it's not the best 3D print. This whole thing was printed on supports. This was printed in this orientation and then supports through here. What? I mean, okay, but also why? I'm sure that maybe there's a good reason. I don't know. Oh, there you go. See that texture from the textured PEI bed. Yes, textured PEI. Best bed surface. A little dip on the overhang there. Maybe their printer was having a bad day. Perfectly functional. If you think you can do better, you can download the STLs from the Speedybee website and print them yourself. And we're going to pull out one of the prints, and it's going to mount here in the back of the frame. This print is going to slide in as shown here, and it's going to be held in with some M2 screws that go up through these little screw holes here, and it's going to create a little protected back area for the receiver. So the receiver is intended to drop down in this slot and go in this area, and the antenna will be mounted here, of course, and there's various holes. This antenna mount here might be for a bigger antenna, like a 900 megahertz antenna, but we've also got these little holes here for the little 2.4 gigahertz antennas that a lot of people are running, and little holes here for longer antenna tubes for an older, like a FreeScast style antenna. So there's mounts for all three major types of antennas you might use, and a nice secure place to mount the receiver where you can mount it so that, what are you going to mount it on? You're going to mount it like here? How are you going to get at the bind button? You would have to get at the bind button or whatever through here. Oh, and what's this thing? I don't actually know how, because normally you use double-sided tape against this plate, but that's not going to fly. And then they got this little cover here that's like frosted plastic so you can see the receiver LEDs. And then I guess if you needed to get at it to bind, you would take these screws out and have to take this off. That's a little annoying. And it's a little annoying because, like, clearly the intent is that you're going to mount your video transmitter here. So the video transmitter is going to be covering up this slot, and it's like, okay, great. We're just going to mount our receiver down here, and then we'll have access to the receiver. It'll be out of the way. It won't have a problem figuring out where to mount it. But I guess you could just leave this cover off and mount the receiver so it was kind of accessible through this hole. I guess you're not required to use this. How often do you bind your receiver anyway? Making excuses. So we're going to have some M2x7 screws. So we got these M2x7 screws, and they have to go in this hole here, but you have to line up the TPU to fit and find the little hole in the TPU that you want it to go into. It's a little bit of a pain in the butt. There we go. There it is. There it is. Go to your hole. That's your home. Don't you want to go to your home? Got it. I feel like I've seen better implementations of this, like on the Flyfish Volador. I don't remember exactly. I think they had four screws holding it in, and it was a little more like secure. Is it? We're going to have an additional screw? No. There are no more screws that hold this in place, and that's a little, like, we got these little tabs here that's supposed to hold it, but doesn't seem to be doing a great job of it. Do we have any more? Yeah, I was going to say the rear standoff screws could go through, but you can see that they don't. It must just be that this like rests up against the rear standoff screws, which are going to go into these holes here on the back. Yeah, so that's not the best. Now that we've got the main body of the frame put together, we can see what kind of mounting options it offers us. And in the rear of the frame, you can see we've got the option for a 25mm or a 20mm mount, but not a 30mm mount. If you're one of those weirdos who wants to mount like a really gigantic board in the back, this isn't the frame for you. There's plenty of room back here for pretty much any of the common modern video transmitters you would want. DJI-O3, Walksnail, even the HD0 Freestyle, which is just a little bit bigger than the DJI-O3 and the Vista. On the center, though, those of you who like to mount 20mm boards are out of luck, as far as I can tell. There is 30mm mounting, and the frame comes with 25mm long stack screws, and I'm really happy that the stack screws do not go through the arms. They do not go through the arms, and they do not go through this bottom plate. They only go through this plate. They are press nutted in place. Having a nut down there at the bottom is going to help with the vibration, the gyro, clean gyro basically, makes your quad fly better. But if you don't have a press nut, then you have to add a nut here at the bottom of the stack, and it takes up some space on the stack, which makes it harder to get all your stuff mounted. It also means that if when you break an arm and change an arm, it is not going to interfere at all with the mounting of your electronics. So that's all as it should be. Except for anybody who wants a 20 millimeter stack. But why are you putting a 25 millimeter or 20 millimeter stack on a 5-inch anyway? What's wrong with you? Don't do that. 30 millimeter, 5-inch, 30 millimeter. Plenty of room, plenty of weight. Your ESC will last longer. This, I refuse to call this a criticism. They're taking a stand. Like when Apple removed the headphone jack. They're saying there's no reason to put a 20 millimeter flight controller on this frame. If that's you, then this isn't the frame for you. In the same way that they've given you this space under here to tuck away the receiver, they've given you space right here to tuck away what? The capacitor. Fitting a capacitor into a build is one of the trickiest things, especially for a relatively tight frame like this. A lot of times I end up sticking it up here in the front, but sometimes that means using wires to get to it. And as you add wires to a capacitor, it makes it work worse. It doesn't work as well. So what they let you do here is no matter which way the ESC is turned, whether the ESC is coming out the back or coming out the front, the capacitor can tuck down into this little slot here. It's well protected in between the two little supports, and it's kind of a wasted space on a lot of frames. Here, they're putting it to use. Very smart. Next, we come to the camera mounting plates, and wow, that's like ultra premium. You can see they're marked right and left. They are not symmetrical. They have one side or the other side. And very good that they are including soft mounting for people who mount cameras like the DJI-03 or the Caddx Moonlight that have gyros on them so they can do image stabilization. Soft mounting the camera is very, very important. So we've got these little inserts, and I think the two inserts are, one is kind of hard plastic and one is kind of a softer plastic. The yellow one feels softer and is going to provide more vibration isolation. That's how that inserts. But if this is on the left, it means this flat side is going to be in and this side is going to be out. And that seems backwards to me, but it very clearly says left and right. Speedybee provides this 3D printed chin guard here. Obviously, the chin is one of the places that's going to take the most impact, and that's going to help protect the metal from scuffs, and it's easy to print a new one and replace it as it gets worn out. But what is going to hold it in place? There is an M3 standoff that goes through, and be sure to use one of the knurled ones, which is 22 millimeters, not one of the smooth ones, which are 23 millimeters, and will not work. That's going to fit right in here, and right like so, to help strengthen up. That's a really smart way to strengthen up the nose of the quadcopter, or the chin, if you will. Because, we're going to take hits here, right? And the carbon is going to be relatively well protected. It's pretty smart. I am disappointed that they milled out here. I don't know why they did that. They've removed a 0.5 millimeter or so of carbon here for no reason that I can see. And that's the place where you want the mostest carbon for the mostest strength. I guess generally it's pretty well protected because the TPU and the metal are going to be taking the hits, but it still bugs me a little bit just on principle. And I love that they're using 12 millimeter screws here, which are going to go well into the standoff just to give it even that much more strength. If you're going to run an action cam, here is the GoPro mount for the frame. It's going to mount on top of the camera cage. It is really nice that it mounts using these standoffs. In other words, it's not just like we got some screws going down through the top of it and it can, the TPU can rip out or whatever. Mounting like this is the most secure way that you can possibly mount an action camera. I'm a little annoyed, as I always am, that they're giving you this style of mount, which for me, it's nice because you can mount the camera, you can mount just about any camera in this GoPro style of mount, and you can mount the camera at any up tilt angle that you prefer. However, it is annoying that the camera, when it takes a hit, it doesn't keep its angle. And I really prefer a 3D print that has a fixed angle for the camera. A lot of people aren't even running action cameras anymore, so who really cares? You could always customize it, right? The STLs are out there. You could make your own. What the hell is this? There's a freaking air intake. Are you kidding me? Air intake? Redo my screws. There's a freaking air intake to blow air on the ESC and the flight controller. Not like they don't get enough air, but that's cute. That is pretty darn cool. They have just put together a lot. You know, the front end of this frame really sums up what I was saying at the beginning, that they have come up with a couple of like new ideas, like the air intakes. But most of what we got here is stuff we've seen before, like the mounting of this GoPro mount reminds me of the Rotor Riot Skyliner. It's very similar. We've seen a lot of this stuff before, but it has come together in a really cohesive way that like really, it just seems like it really works. And I'm here for it. The versatility of the frame continues here in the rear. This 3D print gives options for mounting an XT60, and it does come with an XT60 bulkhead mount that you can solder to and install. You can mount an SMA connector here, and it comes with an SMA pigtail. Very nice. I've always been a fan of this style of mounting because like you can really securely mount this and then screw your antenna to it. There are people who argue that the SMA connector causes a little bit of loss, and they're not wrong, but I've always been a fan of this style of mounting. Or if you want to, you can take a top plate and you can run your XT60 here out the top plate. So whichever way you mount your ESC with the wires coming out the back or the front, you've got an option to keep those wires safe. I really like that they didn't do what the Chris Rosser's AOS frame does, which puts the XT60 right here. Obviously, he's not forcing you to do it, but the frame is made for that. I really dislike that because having the plug here takes up a lot of space and limits your ability to tilt the GoPro back. It also means that there's something there to smash into the GoPro if you crash and your battery moves forward. By just having the wires stick out the top, it means that you don't have as much space taken up there. It just gives you a little bit more flexibility in how you route your battery and how you place your GoPro. And I think that's a great way to do it. Now, if you run the DJI O3 Air unit, you may have noticed it overheats really quickly. And one of the solutions to that is to have a heatsink mounted to it. Speedybee have made a CNC heatsink mount for the O3 to help with heat dissipation. I don't have that to show you, but I did want to let you know that it exists. There are some nice injection molded feet here that you can put on to help protect the ends of the arms. Lastly, battery pad, not a grippy battery pad. Disappointing, but it's what I've come to expect. What about the weight of the frame? Without all the 3D printed accessories, it comes in around 130 grams, which is fairly lightweight, but not so lightweight that you'd expect durability to be severely compromised. With all the 3D printed accessories, it comes to 170 or 180 grams, which is a little bit more, but nobody's forcing you to put the TPU on there if you don't want to. You can decide where you want to be in that range. I do think one thing that stands out about this frame compared to other frames in its weight class is, like, it's clear from these arms that this is not going to be like an ultimate bando basher like Bachgrinder's frame or like the Rotor Riot tank. Those guys have like 7mm, 8mm arms. They're just designed to come home from anything. This is going to be, I think, a normal level of difficulty in the arms and maybe a better than average level of durability. I said difficulty, didn't I? Durability in the front. But it's clearly not the sort of ultimate bando basher. The final thing that made me want to review this frame was its price. Like, for all of the things that it offers here, you might expect it to be kind of in the ultra premium class of like a $60 or $70 frame. Frankly, these days, $60 or $70 isn't even really ultra premium. It's pretty standard. You know how much this frame costs? $40. It's $40 without all the TPU stuff, which you can print yourself if you prefer, or it's an additional $10 to get the accessory kit and do all the upgrades. $50. This is like a hell of a lot of value for $50 and a hell of a lot of innovation. And I'm super impressed with what Speedybee has done here. I guess the only thing that remains to be seen is, like, when people actually start flying it and crashing it, does it hold up or does it sort of fall apart? And with any new product, You kind of can't know for sure until it hits the market, but based on Speedybee's history, I feel I would give this frame a chance, especially at the price. If you're interested in giving it a chance, there's a link in the video description below. And like most of the links below my videos, it's an affiliate link. That means that when you click that link, I get a small commission. It's an easy way for you to support the channel. If you like the work that I'm doing here and you want to throw money at me, it doesn't cost you anything. Just click the affiliate link, go do your checkout, do your shopping. I get a commission on every single thing you buy after you click that affiliate link. You can just bookmark them. And anytime you go shopping, you click them and you're just donating to me. Sure means a lot. There's another frame that this reminds me of, and it is the Flyfish RC Volador. And I did a review of that frame. I'm going to put a card on screen. It's got a lot of similarities, maybe a few differences. In some ways, I think it's a little better thought out. And I'm going to give you my review of the Rotor Riot Tank, which is another ultra durable bando basher. And if you want to see what you're getting with one of those frames, I'll put a review to that also on screen. And links in the video description below if for some reason you can't see the cards. I'll see you there.